Hello and welcome to another episode of This Is Metal. Today is going to be a very special show because recently the lead singer Steve Grimmett from the legendary British heavy metal band Grim Reaper died. And so we're going to be talking about Grim Reaper, not just because Steve died, but that's the band that's really kind of, even though a lot of people love that band, for many reasons we're going to get into tonight, they've kind of fallen under the radar. And I mean, they should have been much bigger than what they were. So we're going to get right into tonight's Joe, and you tell us, are you at all a Grim Reaper fan? I'm assuming you are, so let's get into it and tell us, when did Grim Reaper come on your radar?
Grim Reaper was one of those bands that, I was really young at the time, in the early 80s, mid-80s, and I heard the name, but I didn't get into metal until I was a little older. So I knew about them, but I kind of missed the boat. I was a little too young. But when I did discover them, I was turned on to them, through the album "Rock You to Hell," which I think probably is how a lot of people ended up hearing about Grim Reaper. And the first thing I noticed, I loved the singer's voice. I was like, wow, this guy's a really good singer. And to this day, I still think that. I still respect it. I love that album, "Rock You to Hell." It's a great record. And I think they were an underrated band, and it's one of those sad stories of a lot of bands that came so close. I mean, they were working with RCA Records. They sold over 350,000 units before they recorded "Rock You to Hell."
Yeah.
And they were in a really rotten deal with their label that caused a lot of legal problems and a lot of bullshit for them. And it closed the door to them at a crucial time in their careers because they were just starting to get somewhere, really. And as they were gaining that traction, the door was slammed on them, and they literally just fell off the face of the planet for a long time. And when they tried to come back the first time in the 90s, the scene had completely changed.
Sure. Things
were totally different, and grunge was taken over, and record labels weren't having nothing to do with bands like Grim Reaper.
Yeah, and
so they kind of got slighted, a little bit. So that's one of the things that will be my focus for tonight on this show. And if anybody has the Grim Reaper "Rock You to Hell" album, there's some nice commentary in there. A story of Grim Reaper, wrote by Nick Bocott, guitarist from Grim Reaper, and he mentions all of this and kind of goes into detail about it. And at some point during the interview, I'd like to read some of those because they're directly his words.
And a couple things there. That's kind of my same story I have as far as when Grim Reaper came on my radar. "Rock You to Hell," and like you said, their record company in Europe caused a lot of trouble for the band, and so much so that they had a worldwide deal with the RCA. So RCA, because of their legal troubles, they decided to help the band out and release the album kind of to wider, all around the world. And so they had a little help with that. But what's kind of sad, like you said, "Rock You to Hell" was starting to make some serious noise. It was probably the first time people really seriously looking at this band. And so that's what's a shame is because they started to see kind of a little bit of success come their way. And then like so many bands before them, it kind of just fell apart. So sadly, but kind of going, let's go back to the beginning. I was reading, Grim Reaper was a heavy metal band formed in 1979 in Droitwich, England, which I've never even heard of, by guitarist Nick Bocott. Now, Nick Bocott, when you hear Grim Reaper, he's probably the first name a lot of people think of. He's this world-renowned guitar player, and that's why a lot of people were paying attention to Grim Reaper, because of Nick Bocott and his guitar playing. In fact, if you ever get Guitar World magazine or anything, he's had columns in there over the years, and that's kind of what he's doing mostly these days. And I think he gives online lessons, but he's kind of retired from the business. And as you said, when the band got back together, he made a couple appearances with them, like live, but he never rejoined the band. And going back to the beginning, like I said, they were formed in Droitwich, England, by guitarist Nick Bocott. There had been numerous lineup changes throughout the years with frontman Steve Grimmett, who was the band's longest-running member from 1982 to 1988, then again in 2006 to his death in 2022. Now, what's interesting is I was in my research, I found out Steve Grimmett, although he's probably the other most well-known member of the band besides Nick Bouquet, might surprise you to find out he was not an original member of the band.
Right.
Yeah, and so they released a total of 5 albums, and like I said, Rock You to Hell, which came out in 1987, was the band's most popular album. Now, you mentioned when Grim Reaper did come on your radar, Joe, that you were really impressed by Steve Grimmett's vocals. So let's talk a little bit about that, because you're a singer yourself. So what was it about Steve's vocals that really made you take notice of him?
Well, his clarity, his vocal range, the passion in his vocals, just how he enunciates words, a lot of emotion in his vocal, good melodies, just an all around good singer, and that really, obviously that is something that I listen to right away and tune into, kind of, whether I like the singer or not. So.
And I think as metal bands, another reason a lot of people were taking notice of a band like Grim Reaper was because they were. Iron Maiden came around on the scene like in around 1978 in England, and Grim Reaper was formed like a year later. So very much like Maiden, to me, they had the same kind of imagery, or kind of lack of imagery, if you want. Like very much like Maiden, I bet if you were to see Grim Reaper on the street, probably wouldn't even be able to recognize any of the band members. What I mean by that is kind of like Iron Maiden, they never put the band on the front of a cover. They got their mascot Eddie. Grim Reaper was kind of really into that metal imagery. I mean, they had kind of the name is Grim Reaper, death. They kind of had that metal imagery to go with that. And you never really saw a lot of, photos of the band. And so I think that's another interesting aspect to what they did.
Yeah, I mean, they really had something that I think could have been huge. And it was just a collaboration of mismanagement from the record label, lack of support, and timing, with the band falling off the radar and dealing with the problems and stuff that they had to go through and endure. Really made it difficult for them to make a comeback. And then by the time they were able to make a comeback, everything had moved on from that point. Like I said, grunge had entered the charts and taken over, and all these record labels were signing grunge bands and could care less about bands like Grim Reaper.
And here's probably the most interesting part of the Grim Reaper story that I came across was, like I said, the band was formed back in 1979 in England. Grim Reaper won a Battle of the Bands contest, which featured, get this, over 100 bands in the contest. After Steve Grimmett joined the band. So again, things really start happening for the band once Steve Grimmett joined. And just think about that for a minute. Joe. They take part in this Battle of the Bands, and they're competing with over 100 other bands, and they win that. I mean, that says something right there. You're up against 100 other bands, and you're the band that wins. We are calling my friend Joe Lawson back because we got disconnected. Let's see what happened to Mr. Lawson here. Okay, Joe, we are calling you back. I do not know what happened.
Lost you.
You lost you. But as I was saying, back in 1979 when Steve Grimmett first joined the band, they took part in this Battle of the Bands contest against 100 other bands, and they came out on top. So to me, that right there, that says about something really about the band's talent, that you're competing against over 100 bands and you come out as a top band.
Yeah, that definitely says a lot. I mean, that's some serious competition there, I'm sure.
And I'd like to see some of those other bands that were taking part in that. But as a result of the contest, Joe, it said the band won studio time, but allowed them to record their demo that got the band a worldwide record deal in 1984. With RCA to release the band's debut album, See You in Hell. And that was the album you're talking about. those are kind of the two albums when you hear Grim Reaper, See You in Hell and Rock You to Hell, that people always talk about. So kind of a debut album, which was like the band's great opening statement, if you will, and then Rock You to Hell was kind of their swan song. I mean, two great albums, kind of sandwiched in between one another there.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to read this if I can.
Sure.
This is the liner notes from Nick about a little bit about what Grim Reaper went through. He says, so it was late 1985, even though we'd sold in excess of 350,000 records in America in the space of the last 18 months, we were broke. In fact, according to our label, Cough Cough, Evan, we were not only penniless, we were deeply in debt thanks to the 2 videos and tours. Simple math told us that something was clearly wrong here. So, unbeknownst to Daryl Johnston, Mr. DJ, Concrete Management instigated some serious undercover investigations into Ebony's affairs. In the meantime, we figured we should soldier on in the hope that it'll all come out in the wash. So we set about writing our third LP, Rock You to Hell. Being broke made this a pretty tough task. I was lucky enough to be writing for Swing magazines by that time, Circus USA and Guitarist UK. So that income plus what I made giving guitar lessons and producing local bands helped me get by. The other 3 guys weren't in it though, so this wasn't an easy period. We digged in England as much as we could. For tours of Europe and Japan, Ebony weren't willing to provide any tour support whatsoever. Getting them to even pick up the tab for a pizza while we were recording was like squeezing blood out of a stone, and somehow managed to write and rehearse an album without stuttering. So in early 1986, we once again headed north to record. This time, though, our destination wasn't Hull. It was a tiny village nearby. We followed Johnston's directions to this new studio house, and when we got there, you could have knocked us all down with that proverbial feather. Ebony had moved from the slum dwelling to a Palatal English countryside mansion. The place was freaking humongous. Needless to say, this was proof positive that Ebony's claim of not seeing any money from RCA was a bold-faced lie.
Oh, wow.
We were far from happy, and understandably, our already low opinion of the Johnstons plummeted to lower than whale shit. For the sake of making a good record, though, we bottled our hate. Although we were playing better than ever before, what was coming off tape in Ebony's plush new abode just didn't sound right. It sounded bland in his expensive new custom-built control room, and was even more lifeless on the most compelling piece of gear around, a car stereo. Don't worry, lads, Johnston assured us. Once it's mixed and EQ'd, it'll blow the first 2 albums away. So we continued to play our asses off and finish the job. A couple of weeks later, we got a copy of the final mix. To our horror, it sounded like shit on every system we played it on. We alerted Ebony, and they overnighted us another one. To our horror, it was the same.
Oh, wow.
We called Johnston, but all we got was an answering machine day after day after day after day. Also screening his calls. Not surprisingly, RCA rejected the album. They loved the songs and the performances of the master tape was sonically substandard. Johnston insisted and refused to let RCA have someone else remix it. We sat around for what seemed like forever, waiting for something to happen. And shortly after the honor of opening up for one of the most underrated bands ever, the almighty Budgie, what that is. I don't even know.
Wow.
We got the call. We dared not even dream about lawyers. Had unearthed a serious financial breach of contract. We were officially off Ebony and signed directly to RCA. They immediately booked us into a real U.S. studio with a real producer, the Max Norman of fame.
Wow.
Working with Max was a revelation. He worked hard, played hard, and pulled performances out of us we had no idea we were capable of. We emerged in mid-'87 with the album of our lives. Then before that, we were headlining a U.S. tour entitled Hell on Wheels with Armored Saint, Rest in Peace, Dave You Ruled, and Halloween. The tour was a blast, and highlights included an amazing sold-out show in Dallas, Texas. I landed on some singer named Phil Anselmo when I stage dived and we shared an herbal cigarette afterwards.
Oh, wow.
I wonder whatever happened to him. And a live MTV broadcast on Halloween night, 87, triumphant, we returned to England and started work on album number 4. Nothing whatsoever to do with Hell. Just as we finished writing it, though, the shit truly hit the fan. Ebony slammed us with a lawsuit for supposed breach of contract. Like the true bonehead he is, Johnston sued the wrong RCA and couldn't afford to redo the lawsuit.
Wow.
Sadly, though, this didn't alter the fact that we were being sued. Anyway, to cut a long, boring story short, this forced the band to split up. Our hands were tied by the courts, so we had no choice. It was over. And to make matters worse, for legal reasons, we couldn't even tell the press. So we literally disappeared without a word. 5 years later, the case was thrown out of court. We won, or did we? That's what I meant. So you think, okay, 1987, so we're talking 5 years.
Yeah.
That's 1992. I did this shitty fucking grunge scene era. So bands like Grim Reaper were just fucking tossed aside.
Wow.
So that's what it means by did we win or did we? Okay, like the true bonehead. Okay, that's
Yeah.
So, much to people's surprise and mine sometimes, I'm not bitter about what happened. We got ripped off royally, and our career was cut way, way short. That notwithstanding, we still did more than we could have ever imagined. Hell, I know countless bands who would have gladly donated all of their worldly belongings, including their firstborn, to do half of what we did. And as a direct result of Grim Reaper and how it ran its course, I met my wife, who incidentally thinks the band sucks. Relocated to America, have loads of real friends in the industry, write for Guitar World USA and Guitar UK, and to top it off, am the U.S. product manager for the finest amplifier company on the planet, Marshall. In short, life doesn't suck for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a roller coaster of a ride, but I love the fact that he's so humble. He's got that grateful attitude, like, hey, I got an opportunity to live out my dream. It wasn't all bad. And then that's an interesting story. I now kind of understand why he didn't rejoin the band. I mean, he's probably all the money he's ever made was a result of this band, Grim Reaper, but he's actually made more money outside of the band than he ever did as a member of the band.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things, like I said, a lot of things changed in that era and that time.
Yeah.
Which probably really forced a lot of people to look at things differently.
Oh, yeah.
And make different decisions based on things that were out of their control. One thing that would be really interesting to know, and maybe you know this, Jason, what happened to the rest of the guys in Grim Reaper? I mean, did they go on to play in other big bands, or did they do anything? It seems like the only two people I ever hear about when people talk about Grim Reaper is Steve, the singer, and Nick, the guitar player. What about all these other guys that played in Grim Reaper? I mean, there's a list of about 15 people that were in that band.
That's what I was going to say. When I was looking on the Wikipedia, I mean, there's a ton of band members that came and go. I think those two guys, obviously being the singer and the guitar player, probably wrote the bulk of the songs. And like Nick said, outside of the band, he's done all these columns for Guitar World and Circus Magazine back in the day. And so a lot of people, knew him from that. And but that's so very true, because anytime I hear about Grim Reaper, and those are the two names I know, and I think maybe they were the two most high-profile guys in the band, probably because they did the bulk of the writing. They were kind of the face of the band too. Those two guys, anytime there was an interview, anytime those would be the two guys to do it. You never really heard from another guy. And again, you asked me to name one single other member of the band, I can't do it. I'd have to sit in front of the computer screen and read off the screen. But I really don't know, and that would be something to kind of look into. But an interesting thing that you just read, Joe, is there are so many musicians that have that story that they kind of had their little 15 minutes of fame. They had a little bit of a spotlight on them, and they found other ways to make money, very much like Nick Bouquet has done. Steve Grimmett, to kind of finish his story off, he did come back, and and Nick Boquette, he made a couple appearances with the band, but he never fully rejoined the band. And it became Steve Grimmett's, Grim Reaper, and I think that was for legal reasons. I guess they had some kind of agreement that they didn't really want to call it Grim Reaper unless Nick was a part of that, and so I think they had that kind of agreement where he'd allow Steve to go out and do it as long as he called it Steve Grimmett's Grim Reaper, and so that's the reason they did that. And what's interesting is Steve Grimmett recently passed away, but no official cause of death was really given. But like 2-3 years ago, he was hospitalized, and he eventually lost like a portion of his right leg, I think due to diabetes or something. But what's unique is very much like Leslie West of Mountain. He continued to go out and perform as Steve Grimmett's Grim Reaper, and he'd go and do these shows in a wheelchair, perform on stage. And I think it'd be cool to kind of for people to go online and see clips of that, because to me that's the ultimate kind of metal warrior. You're getting up and doing your thing in a wheelchair. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the guy had no quit in him, and that's awesome. And he was supported by an amazing woman, Amelia. His wife was very supportive of him too. And for a short time, I don't know all the details, but I do know that he filled in, or he went on tour with Three Tremors with Sean and Ripper and those guys.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they even gave him a vest and called him the Fourth Tremor. So they had some good times with him on tour, and he filled in great and jumped up there and sang songs with them and jumped right in.
And just think about that for a minute. Had he lived, who knows? I mean, maybe the next record they would have done that, the Four Tremors. I mean,
yeah, could have been a thing. Yeah.
Just the thought of that. But again, he was ultimate metal warrior. He did it to the end. From what I understand, he was 62 years old. He did not look that old to me, but he kind of, you got to kind of respect the guy for that. He went out with literally with his boots on stage. I mean, he died doing what he loved doing right up to the very end.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
And so I don't know. I heard something about that there's a live album or something that's coming out. So I'd be interested to see what becomes of that. And of course, Nick Boquette, he put out a statement basically saying Steve was a great singer, a great performer. And that he thought it was tragic about his death. Of course, I mean, what else are you going to say? But also.
Yeah, that live album. Let's backtrack that a little bit. It's called "Reaping the Whirlwind." Steve Grimmett, before he passed away, mentioned that in January that it was in the works. So there's a possibility that could still see the light of day. I mean, I don't know if it's been
delayed or anything,
or if it's delayed, or if it ever will get released. But that would be great if it did. I hope so. It'd be nice to do as a tribute out of respect for him, and as a last, the last thing that he did musically. I'm sure he would want that to be released.
Yeah, and then I was also reading that his most recent albums were, which I haven't checked out either one of these ones. I'd be kind of interested, but 2016's "Walking in the Shadows" and 2019's "At the Gates."
Yeah, both of those were albums with his new band, his new lineup, Steve Grimmett's Grim Reaper. So I got some catching up to do on some of that stuff. I'm not real familiar with it. I'm definitely going to make it a priority to give some of that stuff a listen for sure and support it.
Yeah, and it's very sad that they were forced to kind of break up at that time, right when the band started. People were
right when they were really starting to get some traction, and things were looking really promising for him, very much so.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know. I mean, it's one of those things. Like, I mean, could you just imagine that if, for example, Metallica had never done that tour with Ozzy? I mean, their career may have gone somewhere else. You just never know. And it's interesting in his little statement talking about falling over a singer named Philip and Selma, and like, I wonder whatever happened to that guy. I mean, again,
right.
So and then we were talking a couple of weeks ago about the fact that Pantera is getting back together. And then another thing I wanted to kind of ask you about, Joe, is Did you get a chance to catch my interview I recently posted with Wolf Hoffman of Accept?
No, I got to listen to that too. I have a boring and enslaved life. I work 6 days a week, and
I understand.
There just unfortunately isn't a whole lot of Joe time anymore.
Well, I understand, but the reason I ask is be sure you do when you get a chance, because as you may have seen, I posted. I mentioned you to Wolf during our conversation, telling him that it was actually, if you remember, it was the first show we ever did for This Is Metal, where you turned me on to that Accept album, Blood of the Nations, which was the band's kind of comeback album. So we talked a little bit about that in the interview. And
cool.
And so that's why
awesome.
I think you want to mention that. But, when I sit here and kind of think back, I mean, I've lost track of how many episodes we've done, but it's got to be like at least 50 or more.
It's getting up there, ain't it?
Yeah, and
we're gonna catch up to Siskel and Ebert.
Oh yeah, that's funny. That's funny you say that. I used to love watching those guys. I mean, and what's sad is they're both dead now, but they had like a love-hate thing. But at the end of the day, they really loved each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to let people know, Joe, that we are constantly finding new ways to like bring new and exciting shows to them. And I urge people to go online and check out our This Is Metal page. Encourage people to join it, and this is a community.
If you don't check it out, you're not metal. It's just that simple.
Yeah, and that's really because This Is Metal, because that is exactly what it is. That's what we're talking about. And I really want to urge people to, you don't have to join, but if you want to, please do, because it's a community, and we want people to post whatever they want on there. If you're in a band, if you want to post about one of your favorite bands, if you have a show idea, let us know. And the most recent episode, which is our episode on Def Leppard, just posted today, and that was a real fun one, Joe, because like you said in the episode, it was an interesting one because typically we do a show and it's on a band that we're both aware of, and we're both aware very much of Def Leppard, but you were like, I'm not a huge Def Leppard fan. They're not really one of my bands, but it was a fun episode for that reason.
Yeah, it was something different, something fresh, absolutely, yeah. And we keep looking for ways to do stuff like that, and that's what keeps us going, I suppose, that, and just a genuine love of doing this and talking about metal,
Yeah, and I was curious, Joe, if you like you said, you're a busy working man, but have you had any downtime to listen to any new metal that's come out recently, or any bands that you want to make anybody aware of?
Yeah, there's a band called Wolf, and they're from Sweden, and they got a new album out, Shadowland. You can go on YouTube, check out the song right away, Shadowland. There's another one called Dust. Couple of videos they have out for that. They're just phenomenal. I can't say enough good things about those guys. I really love that band Wolf.
Yeah.
So some cool guys. Check them out. They've been around a long time as well. Another great underground metal band. Signed to Century Media Records.
Oh, cool.
So check them guys out.
And I will tell people, I recently got both the new Ozzy album and the new Megadeth album, and great new albums. And the Ozzy album, I think a lot of people like, because he's got a lot of special guests on there, like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Zakk Wylde, Tony Iommi, and I think he's even got like Robert Trujillo and Duff McKagan doing the bass parts throughout the album. He's also got Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers playing the drums. So that's a fun album, and it's about 13 songs you get, and they're all pretty good songs. I think it's worth checking out because it very well may be Ozzy's last album. I mean, he's suffering with Parkinson's disease, and who knows how much longer he can do it. I didn't get a chance, but did you see the other day that he performed at the halftime show?
Yeah, I saw that.
They kind of cut it.
That was mentioned, I've seen, but I didn't actually go and listen to it.
Yeah, well, I think you can catch it online. But anyways, the Megadeth album, I think, maybe the greatest thing they've done in years, and I dare say that it's really kind of brutal and heavy. I mean, there's nothing I think you could even slightly consider even a pop tune. And make no mistake about it, I think this album just goes to prove that Dave Mustaine is Megadeth, and what I mean by that is I think it doesn't really matter who's in the band. Dave Mustaine's the main guy, and he's going to do it his way, but it came out pretty good. And so I think, Joe, unless that's you have anything else to say, I think we'll wrap it up for tonight.
Yeah, I like the new Megadeth. From what I've heard, the first song I listened to, I don't recall the name of it, but I was a little skeptical, and the mix just didn't sound right to me. The vocals didn't sound right, like they fit right in the mix. Something was weird. Something sounded off. It could have been the copy that I listened to. Yeah. Could have been a number of anything, but maybe I'm just being over particular, with high expectations because it is Megadeth,
Yeah.
But I like the following 3 or 4 songs that I've heard were really good and strong, and I like that. On the Ozzy record, though, I got to be honest, you got all these big people, all these big names, and so Ozzy Osbourne, I love Ozzy, but I have high expectations. When I see that name and a new record drop with that name on it, I have high expectations, and I'm just not feeling it. It sounds like a mix between Elton John and Pink Floyd. Every song is just kind of mellow and lame and dark and dreary and depressing and drug-induced kind of shit. I'm just being honest. I'm being real.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully people will either love me or hate me for that. But either way, you got to say my name, right?
Yeah.
So,
your name is in the.
No, that's just the thing for me, though. When I think of Ozzy, I think of Bark at the Moon. I think of No Rest for the Wicked. That's the Ozzy I love.
It's interesting you say that, because I was thinking as I was listening to tracks off of that today as I was driving to work off the new Ozzy album. I don't really think it's. You could really compare it to something like even Bark at the Moon or or No More Tears or even like.
No, it's different, and I understand that. Yeah. He's a much older man now, and he's already done all of those things and stuff. But man, that's what made you the man you are and gave you your empire, your fortune, is your fans.
Yeah, well,
and the fans want albums like that. The fans loved albums like that, and he was really good at it.
Well, Joe, I think it's a couple of things. His age and the fact that he's suffering with Parkinson's disease, I think he wanted to get in there and do whatever he could. But I think, let's be honest.
Yeah, I could see that too. Yeah, he probably was just doing what he could do, and honestly, at this point in his life, he's going to do whatever he wants to do.
And he can.
Probably doesn't give a shit if anybody else likes it or not.
Yeah.
And he's just doing what he wants to do and what makes him happy. And that's cool too, but I'm just giving my 2 cents.
Oh, no.
From a fan perspective, just strictly from a fan perspective.
Sure.
Somebody who grew up with that old Ozzy, that's the shit I love.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that too, besides his age and his illness, is, let's be honest, all those great albums you mentioned, what made them great? The guys in the band, and also, if you look at any Ozzy album, Ozzy, although he's got a great publishing deal because Sharon manages him and that, Ozzy's not a songwriter. He gets the songwriting credit because it's his band, but like Zach Wilde, Jakey Lee, Randy Rhoads, Bob Daisy, they wrote all the songs, and they got ripped off, but you know what I mean? So, whereas the last 2 albums, I think, has become more about having these guest stars and again writing with different people. It's going to sound different, but Ozzy was never really a songwriter, if you know what I mean. He had great songwriters in his band, even like the drummer that played on No More Tears, Randy Castillo. He was even a songwriter. Mike Inez, who's in Alice in Chains, he wrote some of the songs. Ozzy just kind of gets the credit because it's his band, and he can do that.
Right.
So,
a couple of quick things I want to mention about Grim Reaper.
Sure.
See You in Hell, Fear No Evil, and Rock You to Hell all appeared in episodes of Beavis and Butthead.
Interesting.
With Beavis and Butthead making fun of the songs in the videos. It's kind of sad to say that, but that is a way to commercial success is through television and things like that. So at least they got mentioned there, and their song "Lust for Freedom" was used as the title track for a 1987 women's prison movie of the same name. So, at least they're being brought up and remembered in some fashion or form. And I hope that there's a more positive light shed on them in the future.
I'd be
people making movies, writing columns, articles, whatever, what have you. Also, their studio albums: "See You in Hell" 1983, "Fear No Evil" 1985, "Rock You to Hell" 87, and then Steve Grimmett's Grim Reaper released "Walking in the Shadows" 2016, and "At the Gates" 2019.
And again, you know what's interesting, Joe? I mean, you bring up Beavis and Butthead, which like Kip Winger was known for. They were picking on him and stuff, and throwing the dart at him. But what's funny is Beavis and Butthead has become pop culture now, so that's kind of a cool thing that they would even be mentioned. The fact that Grim Reaper was even on Beavis and Butthead's radar, like you said, and probably this is a cool place to wrap this up for tonight. The coolest thing I found. In regards to the album "See You in Hell," that actually hit, and it peaked at number 73 on the U.S. Billboard chart. So again, not that you want your album to, hit number 73, but I mean the fact that it even hit the Billboard chart for a band that was kind of on the rise. That's a major accomplishment, I think. That's probably one of the biggest accomplishments that band ever, had hitting the Billboard chart.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, the thing I think is called the Billboard 200 chart. So if you're even on, in the top 200 today, that's a pretty big thing. I don't know what it was back then.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
And the thing I would be interested to find out is, like for example, Van Halen, they were, they're still a world-renowned band. Have a ton of fans, but when anybody dies, I was reading, for example, the day Eddie Van Halen died, everybody just was ordering Van Halen albums, and so what I'd be interested to find out is if more and more people, now that Steve Grimmett has died, start going online and purchasing, Grim Reaper song albums, or downloading the Grim Reaper musical catalog. Because even guys like Elvis Presley, Jim Morrison, I've read where these guys, as popular as they were in their life, they've actually sold more records dead than they ever did alive.
Yeah, that's believable. Sad but true.
Yeah. A great Metallica song, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, we're had a blast doing this, and we're going to be posting this show like in 2 weeks. It'll be the next show to go up, so I can't wait to see kind of what kind of response we get. And I think what we'll do when we post the show is I'm going to post some of these songs we've been talking about, from some of the albums. Because what's interesting is I'm aware of the band Grim Reaper, like you said. I can't name probably a single song, but "Rock You to Hell," that was the album, kind of was popular at the time. There was a local metal station where I'm from, and they were playing that at the time. And again, just kind of sad that the band was just on the crust of becoming the next big thing.
Yeah, they were a great band with a lot of potential, and got royally screwed over, man. And hopefully more people will talk about them and bring them to light in a positive way and talk about them. Our good friend Sean Peck, I think, did a show on them after Steve Grimmett died.
Oh wow!
So so we'll have to
look for that. And
definitely bring him up in positive ways, and make sure that he's remembered with the likes of other people like Dio.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too. Like you're telling me, what are the other guys' names? I really don't know. But again, I think the fact that he's a guy that everybody, he's one of the guys that everybody knows. Okay, yeah, Steve Grimmett, Grim Reaper. So he made some kind of an impression on people. Because the other guys in the band couldn't even name. I don't even know the bass player. Who was he?
Right.
But they're part of the band. But thanks for taking time to do this, Joe. It was fun doing this, and I will be reaching out to you, next week, and we can be coming up with ideas for the next show. But take care, my friend.
Always looking forward to the next one.
Okay, bye-bye.
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.